now let us learn what is cost minimization analysis. As I said, the objective is minimize cost here more than maximize output, because the effectiveness is similar, and we learned here that this is yes, that is we have a good evidence of effectiveness, and then we do cost minimization analysis when we have this questionnaires as well. That means our effectiveness of interventions are equal. So which primarily says that over here my objective is not output maximization, my objective is basically cost minimization, and that is why it is known as cost minimizing analysis. Yes, so the first thing is that we are comparing between two or more alternatives, always similar, always same, between two or more alternatives, uniform for all these techniques. Next is outcomes are assumed to be same, they may differ, but we are assuming that economics is assumption. Yeah, so outcomes are assumed to be same. Third is generally not recommended because it ignores the primary criteria of heterogeneous nature of healthcare. Market, healthcare market. Yeah. So this is about cost minimization analysis, and we really don't recommend cost minimization analysis if and only if it's like say I am taking paracetamols, right, and then I take crocin, I take Calpol, or I take Dolo 650 if they are all together same. Dolo 650 maybe not, but yeah, these things, or Combiflam maybe. So if the compositions are more or less similar, or I apply move, I apply Volinigel, I apply some other whatever these things are. So and if my fever in the first example comes down in 3 days, over here my muscle spasm gets relaxed in 3 days. So the effectiveness is similar, and then it's straight away I just ask that which costs how much, and eventually you will find that the prices are very, very close to each other. They don't really differ by a large margin. No, they are very, very, if one pain balm is 70, the other one is 72 maximum, yeah, or 75, that's all. So there is not much of price advantage either. That's primarily because they also accept the effectiveness are similar, so or close to similar, even though they can say that we have this, we have that, and we are advanced, and we so eventually it is nothing like that, and that probably can be the best example of cost minimization analysis which we practice in our day-to-day life whenever we go to a medicine shop, and then maybe if I don't have close idea about, or I don't have a predetermined preference about a particular drug or a particular process, then probably I generally do a cost minimization analysis. Or if I just need to get a polio drop to my child and I missed those dates, if I need to go to a doctor, it's just giving a polio drop, which is 100 rupees if I go to A hospital, 100 rupees I go to B, or 100 rupees if I go to C, or maybe they don't take anything. But at the same time, even if they are giving it free of cost, the doctor has to be paid, right? And in some top tertiary hospital, if I go, they may charge 700 rupees. That's the rate in Bangalore, 700-800 rupees. If I go to a general small time nursing home, it's 300 rupees. I go to a small clinic, it can be even less. So it really, and then you decide that okay, I don't really want to go to those tertiary care hospitals, because why should I pay just for for this polio drop, which for my mistake I missed those days, so I don't want to really pay that much. Anyways, so the next comes cost effectiveness analysis. So what we do here, we first have an idea about the outcome. Next, the outcomes are not similar to each other, but at the same time the outcomes are close and common. The outcomes are not same, the effectiveness are not same, the effectiveness varies, but the outcome is measured under the same unit. Yeah. So and then these outcomes can be the level of hemoglobin, or kind of glucose level, my blood pressure. These are the basic parameters, right, of our health, and then my iron content, calcium, and all these things, if I take some treatment to improve all these conditions. So and these are the easy measures, right, and you can eventually measure it based on the disease adjusted life years, that how many years you have basically lost or lived with morbidities or with disease. So these and then the lesser is that, the more is the effectiveness. So we can estimate it in some quantifiable techniques, and which are uniform across all these all these alternative techniques. Therefore, when we do this cost effectiveness analysis, both of course cost is a numeric figure, but the effectiveness must have to be a numeric figure, they have to be quantifiable. And the cost effectiveness analysis, so quantifiable effectiveness, in fact, the the measures can also be quantifiable, such as that if not in terms of cost, that the hours of exercises, the kind of food intake, or the total calorie intake, right. So and then you can again monetarily estimate the cost as well. So and then I forgot to tell you, in basically in cost effect, I mean in economic evaluation, all these techniques can be estimated in terms of cost. While we measure the cost, it should include both the direct cost as well as indirect cost. And when we include the direct cost and the indirect cost, when we learned about our cost mechanism, it should include all the parameters, and it of course have comes with a challenge, but still to understand the best impact of a cost effectiveness analysis or a cost benefit analysis, it's important that we have a clear idea about the cost. Eventually, for certain techniques, say for a cost benefit analysis, we may ask for a social cost or the social benefit. Yeah, so because that in our previous lectures we learned that external benefit and external cost is very, very important, and if we don't really adjust for that, and if we don't really get an idea about that, then we are moving of course towards this market imperfection and an inefficient output. Yeah. So having said that, this cost effectiveness analysis is basically the most practiced economic evaluation technique. In healthcare. And most suitable, yeah, it's most suitable as well, I don't have to mention. So what we primarily do in cost effectiveness analysis, that we bring and compare, we compare cost and effectiveness, compare both cost and effectiveness in a same common platform. Yeah. The second thing, how we compare the cost and effectiveness, we measure it in terms of that incremental ratios. Yeah, so this is also known as incremental cost effectiveness ratio, and which sets my decision rule that, you know, based on this incremental cost effectiveness ratio, I will take my decision that whether I will adapt a particular technique or I won't, or whether a particular cost effectiveness study says that this particular process is good enough, and this particular process, if I move from one process to another process, process A to process B, maybe the improvement is not really high, really convincing. So we do a incremental cost effectiveness ratio, and then we try to understand the what is beyond the ICER, you know, or I will say values beyond ICER and its implications or interpretations. Yes. So when we do a cost effectiveness analysis, we basically follow a framework. The first one is state objectives and perspective, that is the constraints, the scenario, like the situation analysis. You set your objective doing a situation analysis, otherwise maybe you are setting your objectives wrong, and maybe your research question is also wrong, your hypothesis doesn't really match with your current scenario or the future scenario, what you are certainly going to meet. So while we are talking about the frameworks, of cost effectiveness analysis, the first thing is state objectives and perspective, right? The second one is identify the alternatives, right? That's what we are going to do based on a particular objective, because otherwise I may have thousands of alternatives, but I have to find these alternatives which will be coming from the objectives. My objective, and they all are related, you know, healthcare is very, very related. So my objective is maybe my improvement of my mobility, but then that improvement of mobility can be treated by a orthopedic surgeon, can be treated by a neurologist, can be treated by a physiotherapist. So there are several, and within a particular stream, within neurology, within orthopedic, so there are several processes, right? So all these are my alternatives. But looking at the objective, that whether it's a neurological problem or whether it's an orthopedic problem, my broad objective may be the movement. But then we do the perspective analysis, that we need to understand that which are the logical alternatives, because we won't probably studying all the alternatives and then making life cumbersome. We won't be doing that. So identify the alternatives, and then the third is identify and measure the costs and benefits. Right, and these costs and benefits are all these sensible alternatives which we will be studying finally. The fourth one is, after measuring the costs and benefits, we will be doing a sensitivity analysis. What is sensitivity analysis? Sensitivity analysis gives you a kind of confirmation about a relationship between the dependent variables as well as the independent variables. There can be a set of dependent variables and a set of independent variables, and one particular model with one dependent variable and a set of independent variable for a given population, the result can be very, very different from the result of the same model worked on a different population. And if we do a meta-analysis or a systematic review on a particular subject, we see that these kinds of effective cost effectiveness analysis or economic impact evaluation studies or health technology assessment studies, I'll just write you the name, health technology assessment studies, it's the similar thing. Yeah, and all these studies have found very varying examples, outcomes. Yeah, and then it's very difficult to come to a common understanding or come to an understanding that which is an average effectiveness or which is an expected one. So, and that is where we collect the data through these meta-analysis, so either randomized control trials or meta-analysis. This is a systematic review. It's this is a statistical process of systematic review, highly practiced in medicine sciences, because the effectiveness are so widely varying. So, and then just looking at a literature, it is difficult to take a decision that, oh my god, this literature says that, so I expect this. No, it doesn't really happen like that as far as these clinical studies, medical studies are concerned. Okay, so I will just wipe this off, or probably I could keep it anyways. So, then the next is to continue with the flow, that after we do a sensitivity analysis, we come to a consensus, we have an idea about kind of confirmed or kind of convincing outcome or the relationship pattern. And then the last one is discuss the assumptions and results and interpret. Right, discuss the assumptions and results and finally interpret. That you have drawn several assumptions, right? You have probably not taken all the variables. You have not probably considered the difference of effectiveness in that way, which used to be or which is generally like that. And now to simplify your problem, because operations research problem is a kind of an operation research problem. In an operation research problem, we try to simplify a problem, general problem, a story boiled down to a simple mathematical formula. So, this is in terms of the framework of cost effectiveness analysis. Now, this, as I said, that the cost effectiveness analysis we measure in terms of incremental cost effectiveness ratio, right? Incremental cost effectiveness ratio, again, as the name suggests, incremental means that marginal changes, right? That if 1 unit of something changes, how much the dependent factor change, right? So, over here incremental cost effectiveness ratio, again cost and then effectiveness. So, it is like we can call it as ICER. It is delta C by delta E. So, delta C is change in cost, or percentage change in cost, whatever, change in effectiveness. So, to bring 1 unit change in effectiveness, how much cost I am incurring? To bring 1 unit change in effectiveness, how much cost I am incurring? And based on this ratio, I will set my decision rules, that whether I consider a particular improvement or change in to get 1 unit more effectiveness, if my cost increases say by 5 rupees, I say, oh, it's not that, maybe it's not that much, so I can continue. It probably says that if I can bring this effectiveness, it has a at a long run it has a high longer benefit or larger benefit. So, maybe, and for that 5 rupees I won't let go that benefit. At the same time, if again 1 unit effectiveness increment will charge me this for the same 1 unit but a different process costs me 15 rupees more, then I will say no, I am not going to get that. So, this incremental cost effectiveness ratio gives me, based on that I will set my decision rules, and my decision rule may vary from others, yeah, and that depends upon the budgets and everything, managerial aspects. But at the same time, and these ratios for a particular treatment process or a particular particular objective will be very different from another objective, right? So, it varies from objective to objective, from the research setting to research setting. So, we cannot really standardize the decision rules for a particular process. And these all processes are independent programs, and we really don't take decisions based on the averages. averages, or average cost effectiveness. Right, this is simple C by B. So, and we don't take decisions based on that. Based on C by B, E, average cost effectiveness ratio. Yeah. So therefore, say if I have an example like A, B, C and D, and then I have cost of a screening test, yeah, anything screening test, and my effectiveness. Cost and effect basically. Yeah, and then my cost, if say this is 100, this is 20, this is 200, this is 35, this is 500, this is maybe 76, this is 800, this is something close to 157, and then I can measure a C by E, right, which is 100 by 20, 200 by 35 and so on. But we won't measure based on this, we will estimate a cost effectiveness. So, the first one will be blank, the second one of course is kind of cost. So, change in cost is 100 rupees, by the changing effectiveness is 15. So, this is my cost effectiveness ratio, and for each I will have a cost effectiveness ratio that say from this minus this and then this minus this, and that is how I met my cost effectiveness ratio, and based on these values, cost effectiveness ratio or marginal, that is the marginal impact, I will take the decisions, but not on this. Yeah, so remember that. So and if, and these are these IC here based on which we take the decision rules. And if we want to plot this decision rules technique on a four quadrant diagram, then it should be like over here my new treatment is effective, more effective, new treatment less effective, new treatment less costly, new treatment more costly. So, if I am on this quadrant, any point on this quadrant, there will be new treatment is more costly and more effective. So, it is a win-win scenario, right? Here, so it's it's a win-loss scenario, because here your treatment is becoming more effective, but the cost is increasing, right? So, you don't really take a decision, yes or you it's not easy to take a decision. Over here new treatment dominates, because if this is the starting point or this is the the current technique, current process, so and I am comparing this 0 0, that is the origin, from 0 0 I am trying to estimate that which one. So, over here if I move, I get any point, and these all points over here gives me this incremental cost effectiveness ratio, they will give me an IC here. And then if I can estimate them, then over here on this quadrant we can see that my new treatment is more effective, but the cost is also coming down. Yeah, so the treatment is more effective, cost is coming down, so it's a win-win scenario, and you will certainly close your eyes and will go for this new treatment. So, the new treatment dominates. Whereas over here, you know, again the catch is the new treatment is less costly, so a positive over here, but the most important thing is that it is less effective. Yeah, so I understand that it is less effective, but I shall I go for the lower the cost, you know, that given the condition that it is less effective. So I need to decide on that. Over here, old treatment dominates, because for the new treatment, not only my new treatment is less effective, but the cost is also high. Why should I take that? I will stay here, right? So on any of these points over here, on any of these points, I will never take this decision. That's primarily because it's not only more costly, but my effectiveness is also going down. So I will stick to my old process or old decision. Therefore, what we do, we draw a line through this point. Yes, and this gives my maximum ICER, incremental cost effectiveness ratio. Yes, anything more than that, anything beyond this, I won't choose, right? I will stick to the old treatment. So any value more than this, that will show me that say the point here, it will give me the new treatment is more effective, I mean more costly, but less effective as compared to this, or as compared to this, or this is, you know, even if the effectiveness is similar, if I compare this point and this point, the effectiveness is similar, but the cost is more, right? So any point beyond this line, I will not choose. Similarly, over here, say a point over here, what is happening? So the new treatment is less effective, even if the cost is low. So shall I go to that extent that I understand that the cost is low, but I go for a lesser effectiveness? That I understand that, you know, homeopathy is lesser effective, but I will go with that because the cost is low, because I can't afford. But how far? I may take that decision, that can be a part of my rational decision making, but how far? Because after a certain while, nobody wants to compromise on their health, or, you know, if there is everything, you know, ceteris paribus, everything given, that the quality is there, the affordability, the accessibility is there, still people may choose that, okay, even if it's a less effectiveness, but I will go for less costly because it really doesn't, it's not a very serious concern for me. Or I'll just sit back at home, and then who will take this antibiotic and all this, yeah. So again, over here, the catch is, the cost may be lower, but at the same time you are compromising on the quality. But with the lowering cost, you will not lower your effectiveness by a large margin. So you will remain somewhere here, right? So you will your decision rules will be taken by any points which will be on this right hand side, and these decisions will be given by ICER, which is delta cost by delta effectiveness, and should be less than lambda or less than equals to lambda, or this line, yeah. Either you take that or not. So less than equals to lambda. So lambda is that ICER value, maximum ICER value. This is the lambda, this value. Yes. So we'll stop here, and then next class we will discuss about cost utility analysis, the daily equally, and cost benefit analysis. Thank you very much.